Are you looking for an athletic scholarship? You're in the right place. This is the Recruit Me Athletic Scholarship Podcast, the longest-running podcast on recruiting and athletic scholarships. We're here to help your family navigate the recruiting road all the way to an athletic scholarship. He's a recruiting expert and a dad of a D1 athlete and a high school athlete pursuing a scholarship. With a wealth of experience to share, here's Recruit Me CEO, Brent Hanks.
Welcome to episode 223, an interview with a parent of a D1 soccer player, a high schooler being recruited, and an up-and-coming sixth grader, Kevin Easley. Part 1. Kevin's interview was so filled with helpful information, I had to split it into two parts. So let's get to part 1 of the interview. Welcome, Kevin.
Brent, thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate you taking some time, and we're going to jump right into some questions about your family's experience with recruiting. So, Kevin, tell our Recruit Me families a little bit about you and Melissa, and besides chasing 3 kids, what else do you do, and what's your sports background?
What I do for a living, I'm an attorney. My wife is a homemaker. We're try to be active in our community, active in our church. And then, like you said, we spend most of our time chasing our 3 kids from one sporting event to the next.
Yes, we see you a lot. And what kind of sports background do you and your wife have?
Both of us in high school were what I would call multi-sport athletes. We both went to very small high schools. And so you basically went from one sport to the next, and everybody pretty much played everything. And in fact, there were some sports, if everybody didn't play, you wouldn't really have a team. So that was kind of our background. Melissa, my wife, excelled in gymnastics. She did club gymnastics and ultimately earned a scholarship at the University of Missouri and was on the gymnastics team back when they were in the old Big 8 conference.
Well, and you have 3 children. You have Jadyn, Jace, and Jet. So you guys really went out on a limb on the J's there. And Jadyn, I believe, is a year older than my son, Parker. Jace is the same age as Sutton. So they're juniors in high school. And Jet's a 6th grader. So tell us a little bit about those 3 kiddos.
Well, Jadyn is a sophomore at the University of Missouri. She plays on the soccer team there. She's kind of your typical oldest child, pretty independent. All 3 kids are very competitive by nature. They were all multi-sport athletes. They'll play anything. You can make a game up, and they would play it. Jace is a competitive kid as well. He's kind of your typical middle child, driven by the need to prove himself. It seems to be what motivates him to do well. Jet is probably my most competitive child. Jet will take everything and turn it into a competition. I mean, if you tell him to go get dressed, he'll want you to time him and see how quickly he can run upstairs, get dressed, and get back. And it's not just sports. He likes to play card games and video games. And just competing is what really drives him. Good kids so far. Haven't had any significant problems with them, so all is good.
Yes, they are. And I think I said Jadyn's a year older than Parker. I think she's a year younger than Parker. And Jace, we've had the opportunity to play just about all sports with Jace throughout the years. And Jet, I've just watched him grow up, and he does fit his name. So starting on the recruiting information, when did Jadyn start getting college attention by playing both club and high school?
Jadyn first got attention in the middle of her 8th grade year. She went to a camp during the over Christmas break at Missouri State. It was an indoor camp, 2-day camp. She went, and at the end of that camp, the coach approached us and said he'd like to talk. That's kind of when it started, and that's when it took us by surprise. That's not why we were there. She just wanted something to do. She was bored. We got a little flyer about the camp. She wanted to go. We took her, but that's how it started.
Well, and I don't know if we said this earlier, but Jadyn is she's playing soccer at the University of Missouri, and I know she started a lot of games or played in a lot of games last year, and I think they're in the middle of their season right now. Is that true?
Yeah, they're having because of COVID, they're having a little different season. They're playing basically half of their season in the fall, and they're going to play the second half of their season in the spring. So in the fall, they'll do most of their SEC games, and they will play their SEC tournament. And then in the fall, in the spring, they'll pick up a lot of the games that were canceled, a lot of non-conference games, things like that. And then they will play the NCAA tournament in the spring. So a little different this year.
Yes, it is. And we're crossing our fingers for baseball and basketball too. So I've talked in nauseum about Parker and how exciting it is to go watch him get to play in college. Tell our audience a little bit about how you feel whenever you get to go see Jadyn play.
Well, Melissa and I are both Mizzou alum. My parents are Mizzou alum. Melissa's sister is a Mizzou alum. So watching your daughter run out of the tunnel with that jersey on, it means a lot. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to our family. And she, at a very young age, she was 10 years old when she first told me she wanted to play soccer for Mizzou. So knowing that was her goal from a very young age and seeing her fulfill that goal, it's a great experience. It's a great experience. And playing college sports is a great experience. The tutors, the discipline that it takes to keep up with everything, the friends, you walk on campus and you've got an automatic group of friends. It's a great experience. She's having a great experience with it so far. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It's a job, but the benefits are definitely outweighing the price.
Well, and it's so fun to watch, see her progress and see you guys post stuff on Facebook and Twitter. So I'm excited to watch her through her career. We haven't done a lot on soccer, so we've done a lot on baseball and basketball, but soccer's a little bit different for me. How does soccer recruiting work in general with both club and high school?
Well, I'll talk about it maybe more from the girls' perspective than the boys. My son, Jace, is in the process of going through it now, and it's a little different than it was on the girls' side. I think the biggest thing on the girls' side is it starts so early. I was just shocked when she's in 8th grade. I mean, she's 14 years old. And I would have never, ever even thought at that age to start getting her in front of college coaches. But apparently for girls, because they mature quicker than boys, that recruiting process starts a lot sooner. Now, I think some new NCAA rules is attempting to slow that down a little bit on the girls' side, but it's an early process. As far as help from your high school, all I can do is talk about the high school she went to, and I can tell you she had no help, or they didn't reach out to any schools for her or any of the other girls on the team. There were several girls on her high school team that ultimately signed to play with various schools, but none of them received any help from the school. So I would just say, at least on the girls' side of soccer, I wouldn't count on receiving any help from the high school. Club soccer, obviously that's your platform. That's your platform to show what you can do. That's where the highest level of soccer is played. The highest level of soccer is not played in high school. It's played at the club level. That's where you get teams that are concentrated with all good players. Jadyn played on a team out of St. Louis. Scott Gallagher Elite played in the ECNL league. It's a national league. Every girl on that team signed with a Division I school. It's that, and then when you have that many good players playing on one team, you start to have a lot of college coaches that come and watch your practices. They come and watch the games. They come to tournaments, and there's that level of exposure. So quite a bit of exposure can come from club soccer. High school soccer, you might get some of the local schools to come watch you play at a high school game. But as far as anybody that's outside of your area, probably not going to happen on the soccer side.
And that's what I was interested in, because baseball is kind of a club or off-season type of recruiting also, because a lot of times the teams that are recruiting you are playing at the same time as when you're playing in high school. So that does kind of lend it to a club situation. Did the club situation, did they help you contact schools and help walk you through the process?
The club team she played for in St. Louis did a little bit. They would put you in the venue, and then it was kind of up to you. And their coach would, if you told him what schools you were interested in, before the tournament would start, he would email those schools' coaches and say, hey, Jadyn Easley's interested in your school. She'll be playing. She wears number whatever, and we'll be playing. Here's our schedule. He did do some of that. They also made a really nice flyer that had every girl's picture, position, number, GPA, because grades are very important in soccer recruiting. Grade point average turns into dollars.
Yes.
Very, very important. So, yes, the club scene helped quite a bit.
And you mentioned that Jadyn started getting attention when she was like 14. Are you seeing a little bit of difference with Jace?
Yeah, quite a bit. He's getting interest now. He's a junior. Prior to that, there wasn't any callers, but I think that's normal. With a boy, they just don't know what they're going to get. And thank goodness that they don't give up on these kids, because when Jace was a sophomore, he was 5'6". He's a junior now, and he's 5'10 and a half. Well, that's a little different player. He's gained 25 pounds over the last year. He's a different player now than he was as a sophomore. And I think in general, coaches know that. They know boys mature at a slower rate, and a kid that maybe isn't a college level looking athlete as a sophomore might be as a junior or senior. And, D2 schools recruit even later than D1 schools do. So if you're interested in a D2 school, I think you have all the way through your senior year, really, to try to find a home.
One of my other questions was, when did you guys start to get attention? And you kind of answered that. Did you guys prepare a list of schools for Jadyn and now Jace?
It's a great question. When it started with Jadyn, we didn't. It was such a shock, and we weren't really prepared at all. We hadn't thought about it at all. And I'll never forget, we were studying. She was 14. It was after her 8th grade year. It was a summer camp. She went over to KU, over to Kansas. And at the end of the camp, they asked us to stay. They wanted to talk to us. And they took us back in the coach's office and sat down, and he started giving his recruiting pitch to her. And he said to her, this is as weird for me as it is for you. You're a 14-year-old kid, and I'm asking you if you think you'd like to come to the University of Kansas, and you don't even know what you want to major in, and nor should you. He said, but if I don't start talking to you now, I won't even have a chance when you're 16 years old. And it was just kind of like, wow, this is strange. And so when we got home from that experience, you make a list of schools, try to figure out how far away you're willing to go. And then also make a list. I would recommend making a list of Division I schools, Division II schools, and maybe NAIA if you're interested in playing. Don't just limit yourself to one level, because you just never know. You never know what opportunities. And some kids want to go to a small school. Well, that's probably going to be a D2 school. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some great players at the D2 level. Yes, we made it, and we've already started making a list for Jace of schools he's interested in.
The Recruit Me families don't know Jadyn. I got to watch her, and she has specific skills. When she was 14, she's very fast and very strong. So the other girls on her club team, were they getting attention at age 14, or was it a little bit after that they got attention?
It was later, at least on her local club team. Now, the club team she played for in St. Louis, I can't really answer to that, because she didn't start playing with them until she was about, I don't know, she may have been 15 or 16 before she started playing with them. The local team here, I would say there was some D2 interest. A lot of the girls signed with Drury, a couple signed with Evangel. And those local schools, yes, they were coming to watch them play, even at, maybe more like a freshman, maybe their 9th grade year.
Well, and like we said, Jadyn was a high-level player early and started getting attention. How did you guys handle, other than the shock that you talked about, how did you handle the early contacts that she started getting?
Well, honestly, and I don't know if this is a good answer or not, but we let her handle it. The coaches, because of the NCAA rules, they can't call you. But what they will do is they'll tell you anytime you're on campus, they can talk to you, or you can call them. And they're real good about giving you their phone number and maybe even suggesting days and times to give them a call. And so Jadyn would go in her room. She would shut her door. She didn't want us to listen. Maybe that goes back to that first child independent thing. She handled it herself, and she would go in and she would call the coach. They would talk for 15, 20 minutes, and she would come out and didn't really want to talk about it much. I'll tell you this, some of the girls that she played with in St. Louis loved the recruiting process. They loved the attention. Jadyn never liked it that much. She didn't like the attention, and she particularly didn't like talking to coaches that she wasn't that interested in the school. She knew she had to act interested because you never know, but it felt fake to her. And so from her perspective, that was one of the hardest things about the recruiting process.
And I've said learning, for a 14, 15, 16-year-old student to learn to talk to adults is one of the part of the growing process, isn't it?
Well, it is. And again, it's kind of, particularly on girls soccer, it's a lot of self-promotion. And by self-promotion, I don't mean bragging and telling somebody how good you are, but you have to take the initiative to reach out. You have to send those emails. You have to make those phone calls. When a coach gives you his name and number and says, call me Mondays at 8:00 for the next 6 Mondays in a row, you got to do it if you're interested. Because if you don't and you miss one of those calls, they may just mark your name off. When I tell people it's self-promotion, again, I don't mean bragging and telling people how good you are. I just mean being diligent, making those contacts, doing exactly what they ask you to do, goes a long way with getting offers to come in.
That will end part 1 of the interview with Kevin Easley. We will pick up next week on part 2 of the interview and learn more about the dynamics of getting recruited in soccer and getting recruited in general. Come back, there is a lot more to learn. Here is the third myth about athletic scholarships. I covered myth number 1 and number 2 in the last 2 episodes. The 8 myths of athletic scholarships are covered in full in the Recruit Me 3.0 athletic scholarship system that you can invest in for only $99. That special price is good through December 31st, 2020. Go to recruit-me.com/system for details. Myth number 3. I can trust everything the coaches say and promise during the recruiting process. Truth. Coaches realize that not all recruits will choose their college. Therefore, the coaches must over-recruit. They talk to more prospects than they have spots for. Some have a tendency to overpromise and overstate too. And the reality, once you enroll, is not always what it was presented in an attempt to recruit you. So be careful. Ask questions. Try to get to know the coach's character. Check into the coach by talking with friends who may know him or her. Find out about his or her reputation. If you can, talk with current athletes on the team to get their take. The 8 myths of the athletic scholarship are brought to you by the Recruit Me 3.0 athletic scholarship system. You can find that on recruit-me.com/system. Also, this episode was brought to you by our sponsor, Cody Hanks, your friendly neighborhood realtor in Southwest Missouri. Contact Cody Hanks at 417-860-9160 or by email codyhanks@swmrealty.com. We'll see you next week for episode 224, part 2 of an interview with a parent of a D1 soccer player, a high school player being recruited, and an up-and-coming 6th grader, Kevin Easley.